Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my review of Marvel Cosmic Invasion. So let's not beat around the bush. This is a really good game for what it is. That's actually a really good way to lead the review. I think if you engage this game on the terms that it sets out, which is to say it is a .emu published retro nostalgia, not quite bait, right? Because it's an absolute labor of love. Just look at it. It's so beautiful. I mean, the nostalgia, I'm, not exactly someone who succumbs to nostalgia, but this really grabs me, the mid-90s X-Men cartoon on bloody Cheese TV before school, that sort of stuff. It really tickles me. And it's throwing back to those arcade cabinets you'd play at Time Zone or a bowling alley or whatever. I still remember things like, what was it, the Simpsons one? Bloody Marge with her vacuum cleaner. And of course, Ninja Turtles, which, by the way, a couple of years ago, these guys did a Ninja Turtles type game like this, Shredder's Revenge or something like that. So the point is to say they know their audience. They know the space in which they play, which is this nostalgia revival. And for that, it's full marks. It's 10 out of 10. However, you got to also understand that if you try and judge this under, let's call it more contemporary value metrics, right? It's a mouthful, but what I'm trying to say is if you're trying to get your dollar per hour, if you're trying to compare this to the other games that came out this week and figure out which one's going to be more worth your time, etc., which honestly, I don't begrudge people for looking at games under that microscope in the current sort of economy and space, because we're absolutely flooded with games. Like, it's the tail end of the year, it's the quiet season, and even this week there's like 7 games coming out that I want to play, right? So like, we are spoilt for choice, so you have to come up with metrics to choose. And if you're someone that just thinks like that and plays like that, and arguably you're a core gamer, a hardcore gamer, whatever you want to call it, like I'm casual, but I'm a core gamer, I like to play everything, then it would be hard to recommend this at its price point to play it as intended, right? You really want to play this 4-player co-op, and even then, you're going to get through it in one sitting pretty much, which is exactly what I did. Now, look, I've played a lot single player with different people. I've put about 8 or 9 hours into it, but clocking it in a couple of hours, and that's picking every single mission, because if you played in arcade mode, there's like either or branching paths. So if you actually played in the arcade version of it, the game will be clockable in half as much time. So there's only a couple of hours here, albeit it's a fantastic fun, but again, it's asking $45 Australian. That's for one copy. Good luck getting, 4 of the lads to buy this. Again, I feel like the target audience, which .emu has absolutely already established, that they've already sort of befriended, are probably going to pick this up sight unseen. They're probably a bunch of old boys like me, but don't game that much. They actually have lives. So throwing a bit of walk around money at something that is like an absolute love letter, well-polished nostalgia hook from their times younger, like, I think it's a done deal. And people in that bracket, the more, dare I say, fair weather gamers, the more adult amongst us, are probably going to have no issue with the arguably stretched value proposition. So much so, like, I was talking to one of the boys I was playing with, and he was like, there's a lot here that you could turn into a roguelite. And there are hints of tiny incremental meta progression in this. You guys get XP, they get a little bit more health bar and all that, but it's really surface level. I wouldn't even really call it much of a mechanic. But as I discussed with him, I think as soon as you do that, you kind of abandon the core base that .emu has built, right? The guys that are going to buy a game published by them sight unseen because they know that they are essentially bringing the games of yesteryear forward into a modern market. Modern principles be damned. So what I'm, obviously just trying to get the core of it to dot point it is, there's only a couple of hours of game here. What's there is really, really fun. The way that you want to play it is with a bunch of the boys all together. And presumably, this is released on console, and it's probably the same price on console. And we, me and the boys, we sort of had a debrief afterwards. And the hypothetical emerged that buying 4 copies of this for like $45 Australian or whatever is ludicrous. They wouldn't do it in a heartbeat. As much as we enjoyed it and really liked our time with it, We probably played one big session yesterday and clocked the game, and we're probably never going to play it again. Even talked about if they added new characters or DLC or anything like that, right? It still wouldn't really be enough to bring us back because there's still, only so much game. It was a fun trip, but it's an expensive price. However, if, I don't know, say we all lived on the same block and we're having a barbecue on Sunday and one of us has a PS5 and this game comes out and you can just buy it for $45, the same price, but all of you can plug in a controller and play it local on the couch, which I presume is exactly what you can do with like a console version, I would buy this sight unseen, even if it was just for that one Sunday afternoon of fun, beers with the boys, living up nostalgia, right? So again, from the Steam perspective, because I'm very much a Steam gamer, it's a tough cookie, right? It's a tough pill to swallow. Couple that with, I played the single player and it's okay, but a lot of the problems actually come out of the gameplay. So as you can see, it's just a beat 'em up. It's an X-Men, Marvel, all of the throwbacks from bloody yesteryear themed. And, it's got a really good roster. It's got some A-tier dudes, your Captain Americas, your Iron Man, but then you got bloody Beta Ray Bill. You got all these guys. I have no idea, but they're, so it's got A and B. Cosmic Ghost Rider. So as if having the Ghost Rider wasn't B tier enough, let's get a B tier, C tier, D tier version of him. I'm not complaining. I think it's actually a very clever way to take popular and unpopular into the roster. I think there's like 15 characters all said. You can unlock a couple along the way. But there is some sort of interplay, some combos, some blocks. It reminds me a lot of Marvel versus Capcom, actually, even though that was more of a 1v1 Street Fighter-esque, battler game. But you can bring in a partner to support your attacks, and you can do this as well. So every character, or every player rather, picks 2 characters, and you can sub them in and out to recharge health on the bench, and you can hold the sort of sub button and punch, and they will do an augmented punch. Again, just like Marvel versus Capcom. So it's really fun, and arguably, it's just a chaotic mess. I played through, like I said, a big session yesterday with just 3 of us that got together, and we pretty much steamrolled through the whole sesh. We nearly lost to the final boss, but generally speaking, we didn't really get skill checked that hard. And, there's a combo meter for each player, and, it became sheep stations and a bit of a pissing contest over who could get the biggest combo. It's like, in a way, we created our own fun. So we enjoyed the spectacle. There's obviously a lot of love that's gone into this, right? But outside of the very specific and very disposable income target audience, it's going to be very hard to pitch this to anyone. Like I said, even someone who lives in this space, this 90s X-Men cartoon nostalgia, which is me, there's a big part of this I am the target audience for, and that's why I tried it in the first place. But if I was being honest, it's a very steep price for something that's kind of thin. And I also worry that this has the potential to become one of those games where you have someone with 500 hours played and they'll give it a negative review. Those Steam reviews everyone laughs at. How could you possibly give it a thumbs down after 500 hours? Well, there's something here. The more that I played it single player, started grinding achievements a little bit, beyond the stack, and just trying to push through the campaign on my own, some other issues came to the fore. So while enemies scale with number of players, the bosses don't really. Maybe their health does, but mechanically there's still a pretty serious damage check. And each mission will have narrative characters that are suggested. It's very clever. It'll be two characters that you can pick as a pair. And for that level, they sort of do the voiceover banter, just the 2 of them, and it mixes and matches over the course of the dozen or so levels or whatever. But often those guys are totally inconsequential as a matchup to the final boss, right? And there are some hard foils in this which become exacerbated when you're playing solo, right? Examples being, some characters are more like brawlers, like a Wolverine type character. Obviously, he's not really ranged, and he's more about grappling, you could probably say. She-Hulk does this as well. Venom to a point. There is a sort of sub-character type that are really limited and they're very single target. And against some bosses, you get absolutely stomped because they are just foiled. They're hard counted. And this goes likewise for the other sort of sub-characters. You have like flyers, you can double jump to fly. And to make that mechanic actually something to engage with, there's almost a 50-50 split between ground units and air units. And I'll be honest, a lot of us really started getting the shits with some of the flyers, right? You had to really focus in on the shadow under the character model, so you go where the human eye isn't necessarily naturally drawn, so as to try and just jump up and engage with them, because the way that the 2.5D depth versus flying characters works, it's not quite as organic as you'd hope. So it's cool because you want flying characters because you're dealing with that superhero space, but you also introduce these creatures that, are kind of a necessary evil, and they become a huge embuggerance to deal with. Likewise, you got more range dudes, more shooty type guys, like your Ghost Riders, like your Rocket Raccoons. And again, my point is, you have these unspoken subgenres that kind of share movesets. You'll get through a level just fine. You'll come up against a boss, and if you've got the wrong character makeup against that boss's mechanic, you'll probably get dumpstered. And that gets a little bit old, especially in single player, where you can pretty much get damage or skill checked and just fail at that final boss and have to do the whole level again. And this is, less of a get good argument and more that it's almost going to actively punish the people that you would argue are fans of this game, right? You have the fair weather dudes that are going to play 4-player on the couch and have a gay old time living it up like the old days. But the guys that actually go down the rabbit hole and put a dozen hours into this and play solo and grind achievements and that sort of stuff, they're going to see the cracks in the game because they're more apparent when it's less of a mess of 4 players just brawling and trying to get a higher combo. So I'd be curious to see how it ages and how it reviews over time. Anyway, I've been critical, but it's more that it taps a part of my brain that, I don't necessarily engage with that often. I wish it nothing but success, and I'm sure that it will at its own level. Like, again, this isn't their first outing, and this is obviously their brand, and they're not even necessarily locked to this genre, which is, the arcade cabinet 2 or 3 hour long game from, back in the day. They've also done things like they did a Pharaoh game, which I really enjoyed as well. And even like, I think Metal Slug Tactics, which was its own twist. And so they're not allergic to trying different things, but of all the stuff that they have tried, this is very much sticking to that traditional brawler from the arcade days, which is kind of something you don't see so much these days. And if you do, it's very low profile because, again, it's difficult to give bloody 18 hours of campaign content while still just staying a brawler side-on beat-em-up without it turning into something like, a roguelike or a Metroidvania or what have you. So I'm sure it'll be successful. It's not going to ship absolute tons of copies, and a lot of people watching this video are probably going to find that this is not actually for them. Maybe, years down the track when it goes on deep sale, you pick it up then and you get the boys together and, these graphics will be timeless. It will still be beautiful years from now. But yeah, for the most part, I feel that those that are the core audience that arguably are part of the projections of Dotemu's, financial considerations have already bought this already. Anyway, these are my thoughts. I enjoyed it. I did. However, I think it's a very tough pill to ask anyone to buy 4 copies of it and play it as intended on Steam. You could probably try remote play. We were going to try it. Every time I've ever tried remote play ever, it's been laggy so badly that it's just unplayable, and I can't see it being any different here. But, obviously these videos aren't exclusively for Steam people. Even though I'm a PC gamer, maybe you're a PlayStation gamer. In that case, I would probably, absolutely pick this up, especially if you've got a bunch of blokes that are going to come around and you're all going to play it like the old days. Anyway, I don't need to waffle because I'm going a bit circular. Team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.